Welcome back to the Octopus Prime channel. In this episode, I'd like to install a local private AI with a beautiful web interface that lets you do some pretty amazing things. If you've been following along, we've been working through a series on microservice clusters. And so we used some virtual machines to simulate a cluster for practice purposes, and we've built it up from scratch. And in the last episode, we finished installing the administrative interface, and we have a 3-node cluster that's now ready to accept services to run on it, or stacks, which are multiple services. And we're going to now install the first service into that stack. And I thought the first thing, the first service that we should try is private local AI, which might interest a lot of you. Now, if you haven't been following along with the microcluster series, don't worry about it. I'm going to give you some specific instructions during this video as well, where you can just install the Docker Compose file that I'm going to show you just on any computer with Docker on it. So it will work even if you haven't been following along with the cluster series. So just be patient and stay tuned, and I'll let you know. In the next video, what I'm going to do then is give you a tour of the AI interface and some of the really cool stuff that you can do with it that you may not be able to do with some of the commercial offerings. I did a conference session on this a few weeks back and had some really positive responses for it at the conference I was at, and got a lot of good feedback. So I thought I would share the same information with you guys and let you see, get a little peek behind the curtains on how this all works. So why don't we start? I'll share my desktop here and let's get this thing installed. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you have your cluster up and running and that you're ready to use it. So what we're going to do is you should be able to access your Portainer interface from any one of your nodes at port 9443, the way that we set it up. If you follow different instructions or use different ports or different instructions, you'll have to use whatever you set up. But with what I set up there, you should be able to use node 1, node 2, node 3, port 9443, and you'll get the login here. So I'm going to log into that. And so here's our primary cluster. If you want to get rid of this news from always bugging you, you can dismiss it. We'll go to our primary cluster. We can see here we have only one stack running, and that is the Portainer stack itself. So we're going to change that. So we're going to install an AI stack. The first thing we need to do, though, is set up our storage. If you recall from previous videos, I told you that for Docker to use the volumes that we set up with the distributed cluster storage, clusterfs before, we do need to set up the volumes beforehand. That way, when we run our service or our stack, it will automatically use the volumes that are already set up. So this took me quite a while to figure out with Portainer. It's a little bit tricky, so I'm going to share that with you here. For the people who haven't been following along, who are just going to be doing this with Docker Compose, just sit back, relax, and we'll get to the Docker Compose part shortly. So what we want to do here is go to volumes, and we're going to create a new volume. But what we have to do, though, is create the directory in our clusterfs system first. If you're going to be using just Docker Compose, not a big deal, because it's just going to automatically create the volumes for you, so it's no problem. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to open a terminal, and I'm going to just SSH into any one of my nodes. It doesn't really matter. When I create the folder on one, it'll be there for the other one. So I'm going to just become root here for a moment, and I'm going to go to our cluster mount. If you recall, we made a Docker folder, and if you recall, we made a volumes folder. And right now, the only thing in there is the Portainer data volume. So let's make a new volume. We're going to need to create 2 different ones. I'm going to show you the Docker Compose file here. Can I make this bigger? I can. We need 2 volumes for our stack. There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 services running in this stack. but we only need 2 volumes. So I'm going to need to make an open WebUI volume and an Ollama volume. So I'm going to make folders with the same name as the volume. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to make dir Ollama here and make dir open WebUI. Technically, you could call these whatever you wanted, because when we set up the volumes in Portainer, it'll point to whatever these are. But I do like to make them match the name of the volumes in the Docker Compose file, so I always know exactly where to find them. And so now, if we list this here, let me clear the screen here so you can see this a little bit easier. There's the folders that we made. That's all that we need to do on the server side of things. And again, if you're just going to follow along with Docker on your computer, no cluster or anything, you don't need to do this part. Because we made this in the cluster storage, it'll automatically be replicated across to the other nodes as well. So I can exit this now. That was all the server side stuff we needed to do. Now, back in Portainer and the volumes, let's add a volume. So let's add the first one. So let's add Ollama, because that's what the compose file is going to be looking for. So this is kind of the tricky part here. You want to choose the local driver, and I'm going to add 3 options here. The first one is going to be type none. The second one is going to be O for option, and we're going to say the value is bind. Third one is going to be device, and here we're going to put the path. So in our case, on every one of our nodes, it's mount gv0 docker volumes Ollama. So what this is going to do is bind this Ollama volume to that path on our cluster server. I'm going to do this on node 1, and we're going to need to recreate this now for all 3. So I'm going to go ahead and create the volume so you can see their Ollama. In fact, you can search up here so you can kind of keep track of what's going on. So there's Ollama, and it's under the node 1 host. So let's quickly do this same thing again here. 1, 2, 3. Type none. Option bind. Device. Mount gv0 docker volumes Ollama. I think I'm just going to copy that for the next one so I don't have to keep typing it. And so we'll do it for node 2. Create the volume. And I'll explain why we need to do this in just a moment here. Option bind, device, and we'll just paste that there, and we want this one on node 3, so create it. So now we have 3 volumes named Ollama, which is kind of weird, right? Normally you can't have multiple volumes with the same name on the same computer, but remember, we're on a cluster. So what it's doing in the background is talking to the Docker service or the Docker Swarm service on each node, and it's creating this volume on each node. And so these volumes exist specifically on each node. If I only made it on node 1 and it automatically tried to move the service to node 2 or node 3, the service would malfunction because its data is all gone. Okay, so this is the trick I found to creating replicated volumes using Portainer. It took me a little bit to figure that out. So now, let's do the exact same thing here with open-WebUI. And it's going to be the exact same thing. I'll do the first one and then I'll spare you the other 2. So type none, option, bind, device, and I'll paste my thing from the last one there. open-WebUI, so my path, and I'll do it on node 1, and I'll create the volume. Okay, so now you see, well, where did it go? It doesn't appear here because I still had the search term here. So if I remove that, here's all of our volumes. So now I'm going to go ahead and create the other two. Okay, so we have 3 Ollama volumes now, 1 on each node, 3 OpenWebUI volumes, 1 on each node. This is the way that you're going to have to do the volumes for every stack that you do on here if you'd like it to be replicated so that the service can freely move between the nodes in your cluster. For the non-cluster people following along, don't worry about it. It'll make a Docker volume right on your machine. So now that we have the volumes created, we can go to stacks, and it's really easy at this point. We click add stack, and we can give it a name here. And let's see, what did I call mine on my own system? We can just call this AI, I guess. So all I'm going to do here is copy and paste my Docker Compose file that I've created in here. Okay, and so this is just Docker Compose format. All right. Portainer seems to use a slight subset of the Docker Compose format. So there are some options that it doesn't seem to support yet, or maybe there's specific reasons for that that I have yet to discover. Not sure. So the only thing I would say to the people who are now going to run this compose file, which I'm going to post in the description of the video below, I'll give you a link where you can download this compose file. The only thing I would tell people who are just running this with pure Docker Compose and on their single computer, no cluster or anything like that, is to add a restart always policy underneath each image. Otherwise, it'll start up the first time you do it, and then you reboot your computer and it won't start up. Why don't we put them in here and just see if I recently updated, well, we just installed this the other day, and we can see if the newest Portainer actually supports that. I think I complained before. If it does, we'll remove it. Before I deploy this, it's really only a click away. Let's talk about the different services here. So obviously we have OpenWebUI, which is going to be the user interface we're going to use. Okay, and you can find all of the Docker Compose terminology and everything right on their Docker Hub page for these different things. We have the Ollama service, which OpenWebUI relies on, but then we have these two others that I haven't really talked about, Dockling and Tika. Let's start with Tika. So Tika is a document extraction engine. So AIs or LLMs on their own aren't super great at extracting content from documents, especially keeping everything sort of organized in a readable fashion that the AI can make sense of it. Tika and Dockling are both document extraction engines. One is by Apache, one is by IBM. Tika is older. It supports a ton of document formats, PDF, docx, Excel files, etc., etc., and it extracts it into a JSON format and then feeds that into your AI. Okay. Dockling is a newer one made by IBM. There's a fantastic video from IBM about it on YouTube. I'll see if I can link that in the description below as well. I'll see if I can find it right away. And it actually extracts the documents but keeps all of the context of the locations of everything. And so now your AI has a better idea, like, well, this picture or this chart here actually belongs beside this text, and it's related to that. That's the context of it, right? Where Tika may have the picture description or something like 10 pages down, not beside the text where it is. So Dockling looks like it's going to be a superior extraction format. There's currently a little bug in OpenWebUI that's preventing this from being used directly in OpenWebUI, but that's okay. We'll leave it here because it's super useful. You can also access this specifically on its own to do optical character recognition, and document extraction on a standalone basis. So it's still a useful tool. By default, we'll be using Tika as part of our open WebUI, which it supports natively. So all this is to say you don't really need to do anything about this. These are additional tools that are going to make our experience with the open WebUI and Ollama a little nicer. So we've given this thing a name. We've pasted a Docker Compose file in here with the volumes, which are already created. And basically, we could add environment variables here. We could load them from an environment variable file. We could load in secrets. So you can load secrets into your stacks. I should probably do a video in the future on how that works, because I use it in some of my stacks. Not all of them. Not all of them need secrets. And show you how to load environment files. Maybe I'll do that in a different video. So let's see here. Oh, it wants a lowercase characters. Okay, so we'll name this lowercase AI. It's picky. Okay, now we can hit deploy the stack. So what it's going to do now is it's going to go and fetch the container images for each of the 4 containers that are in this stack, which will be available in the images section of Portainer later. And if we click on this, we'll be able to see here. So here's each of the containers or the services it's going to spin up, and we can see what the status is. So it's going to take a little bit for this to come up because it has to download fairly large images for these guys. And then once these all say replicated 1 out of 1, then the service should be up. And you can click the refresh button at the top here to refresh that. So I'm going to pause the video while that downloads, and then I'll resume once it's up and running. You can see here the services are slowly coming up. I think Open WebUI is the biggest one of the 4. Dockling is pretty big too, so they take a little bit to download. If you go to stacks here, you can see that we have our AI stack. That stack is made up of 4 services. So if we go to the services here, we can see these services. If we go to containers, we can see the containers that are starting. So Ollama is up and running and Tika is up and running. Okay. You can see the images that it's downloading. So these are all the images that are going to be stored on your computer or your cluster nodes. Within the stacks, if I go into AI, just showing you a few things here while it's downloading, I can click on any one service. So if I click on Ollama, for example, I can look at the service logs. I can look at all the mounts. I can look at the resource limits, placement constraints, which I haven't added any for this. Tasks. The tasks are basically the actual containers that are running. If I want to see the logs, I can click service logs, and then so it logs into the container and shows you the last logs that were generated. So fantastic tool, Portainer. It's amazing that they give away the community edition for free and that we're able to take advantage of it. Okay, I'll resume the video again when these are all finished. Okay, so most of my services are up here. The only one that's still downloading is Dockling. It's taking its sweet time. It's taken about 15 minutes to get the rest of these downloaded, and of course it's going to completely depend on your internet speed. I'm on Starlink here, and it can fluctuate a little bit sometimes, but usually it's fantastic. You can see beside each service it has the published ports. Now the only ones that are going to have a user interface are Open WebUI, and it's going to be on port 3000, and Dockling, which is going to be on port 5001. The other ones don't have a usable user interface port in this configuration. You can stop the stack here, you can delete the stack. If you go to the editor, again, if you're not doing this on a cluster and just doing it on your computer with Docker, all you need is this Docker Compose file, and you just run Docker Compose -f and the name of this file, up -d. I can put that in the description in the video below as well. And you just run that in any terminal, where you have Docker installed on your computer, and it'll fire this all up just exactly the same way as it's doing on our cluster now. And from that point forward, it's identical. Now, if you ever do want to update it in Portainer here, you can check this box here, prune services, and you can choose to update the stack, and you can repull image and redeploy. And what that'll do is it'll fetch all the newest images, tear down the stack, bring it all back up with the newest images, and that's how you upgrade your services. I'm going to exit out of here. And if you prune services, that just means that it's going to get rid of all the old containers that are laying around instead of just having them there. So it's pretty easy to use Portainer, and you can install Portainer as well on a single computer with a single Docker installation. It does not have to be on a cluster. I just like using it to manage the cluster because it works really well. Before I show you Open WebUI and do a couple of setup steps with you there, I just wanted to go back to these images here for a second. I was saying I wasn't sure where they were installed while everything was downloading. I was looking a little bit where that is. I'm pretty sure all the images are stored in that Portainer volume that we previously set up in one of the other videos. And you can see here, if I choose the different nodes, my list doesn't change of images. I'm pretty sure that these are going to live inside that volume. So it'll probably tell you what node it originally downloaded it from, or what. I'm not entirely sure how Portainer does that, or you know, which node it tells you it's on, but I'm pretty sure these are going to be inside that Portainer volume. So we've started up our first service here. I'll circle back to Dockling after we're done with Open WebUI and just show you the user interface there, just really quick. So let's open a new tab here, and I should be able to go to any node on my cluster. If you're on a just a standalone machine, you could do localhost port 3000 or the IP of your computer port 3000. For the people doing the cluster, it's any node on your cluster, port 3000. So you're going to get this sign up screen here. This is local. You're not signing up to any online service of any kind. This is all running locally here. So we click get started, and I'm going to make a name here. And the first account you create is the admin account. So I was going to tell you what's new and the newest version, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Let's just say, okay, let's go. So as it stands right now, Ollama doesn't have any models to use. So Open WebUI is talking to Ollama, which is the LLM or AI engine. It doesn't have any LLMs installed. So let's go fix that. So if I click on my user account button down here, and I go to admin panel, and then I go to the settings tab at the top here, I can look at connections, and here I can manage. You can actually connect Open WebUI to your OpenAI account if you like, to really extend the functionality. And you can connect to Ollama locally here, which we have done, or you can go to Ollama and create an account on their site and have free access, at least for now, to their data center models, which are massive open weights models that rival even the best OpenAI stuff. Let's take a quick look here at Ollama.com. And this is where you would go to sign in and make your own account, and you make an API key, which I will show in a minute. And if you go to models here, you can, there's a ton of models you can filter on different ones. For example, here's OpenAI's ChatGPT open source weights model. So if I click on that, it shows me the different weights. So they have a 20 billion parameter, 120 billion parameter. If you're not familiar with what that means, basically the more parameters a model has, the bigger and smarter it is. Just think of it that way. Now, if you're going to run these locally, you need some substantial CPU and memory, or you need a substantial video card that's in the supported list. Let's look at that for a second here. If you go to their docs and go to hardware support, here's a list of all the NVIDIA cards and all the AMD cards that are supported that dramatically accelerate your model. Okay, so you can look up different models here. There are general ones like ChatGPT's open source one. There's DeepSeek, which is a good one. If you want to do coding, Quen is a good one, and I believe this one also does agentic agents. I use this one in my N8N workflows. I believe it's this one. Google has some of their Gemma stuff in here. There's Llama from Meta or Facebook. They have all their newest open source models in there. There's really a ton of fantastic models here. And you're probably asking at this point, well, why do I even want to bother with this? Several reasons. Firstly, when you use a local model, then you maintain your data sovereignty. In other words, you know where your data is, who's using it, and what they're doing with it, right? And your data is not being scraped, right? So when you run it locally, you have full control. It never leaves your network. Okay, and so you can manage each of these connections. So let's go manage our Ollama connection. So you can see here it says connection type local. And if I verify this connection, it says there is a problem, right? So if you're running this on a local Docker Compose, you're probably going to be fine with the default value they put in here. We're going to need to set this to any node in our cluster if you're doing this on a cluster. So I can change that to node 1, keep the port, and so that's where WebUI is going to be able to connect to Ollama. So let's verify this, and then we get a green connection verified. This is also where you can add a new connection and then add your authentication API key to access their data center models. And I will demonstrate that later. But let's save this for now. Then if I go to models and I go to manage models, I can pull a model from Ollama. Well, I like searching on Ollama. It's just a little bit easier. So one of the ones I want to suggest to you just to start with is Gemma 3N. So it's one of Google's models. They have it in a couple of different sizes, 2 billion and 4 billion. And if you just type in Gemma 3N, it will just download the latest one by default, right? Which will be the bigger 4 billion one. But they've used some kind of weird compression technology to stuff a much bigger brain into a smaller box. How they do that, I'm not entirely certain. So they always have a command here. If you were actually running Ollama natively on your computer, you could just run this command. But really, we just need the name of the model that we want. You could copy the full name. See the little copy icon here, right? So I can copy that, and I can just paste it into WebUI here and tell it to pull that model. It'll give me a little progress bar here. So it's not a big model. It's about 7.5 gigabytes. Some of these get really large. Some of the ones I run on my desktop computer with 16 cores and 64 gigs of RAM are up to about 70 billion parameters, and they're slow, but they still work fantastic. You just have to be patient with them. Gemma 3N will work pretty fast on most hardware. And so it's going to download that, and then we'll be able to start using it. So I'm showing you this to get you ready so that when I do the next video where I'm going to show you what can you do with this, then you'll have a model ready to do that. And if you like, you can also already go make an Ollama account, which is free, and create an API key, and I'll show you in a moment here how to add that in as well. So while this is downloading, just for a moment, the other reason this is such a nice system using Open WebUI, despite all the features that I'm going to show you in the next video, is you can contrast models. So instead of having a single ChatGPT account where you're talking to one model and one model only, I love contrasting model replies. Every one of them is trained on different stuff. They have different specialties. They have different strengths and weaknesses. And in here, we can compare 2, 3 models simultaneously with the same question, right? And then I can compare. And if I like them both, if both responses are fantastic, I click a button and it will actually combine the responses into one, taking the best stuff out of both. So being limited to a single model when you're using some of the commercial ones, I think is really limiting, actually, in the work that I've done and that I've found. And I've really enjoyed being able to contrast the different models, being able to use them locally on my system without having to rely on paying any fees or anything. And I do keep this stack that I've shown you here with Portainer, I do keep that running on Docker on my laptop. So no matter where I go, even if I have no internet access, I at least have access to Gemma 3N or some other smaller models that run on my laptop, which has less memory. And I can use an AI model to do all kinds of crazy things that I want to do locally with no internet access of any kind. So there's definitely some big benefits, especially when you start thinking about the data sovereignty aspects of it. Getting an Ollama account and using their data center model, they don't make AIs, they just collect open source weights LLMs. So they have no interest in collecting your data. And in fact, their platform stands on that we log nothing. That means if they ever get dragged to court for anything, just like OpenAI got dragged to court and was forced to divulge all of the user searches and chat history that they had stored, Ollama doesn't have that problem. They log nothing. It's basically an AI engine. You send a response with your data, it sends a response back, poof, it's gone. Everything is tracked on your end with Open WebUI. So this is on my computer here, or my cluster in this case. That's where the database with all my chats and everything is, and I can back that up and do what I see fit with it, and I can restore a backup. It's on my system. I manage it. I know who has access to it, and I know what's being done with it. None of my data is being scraped from all my AI interactions, whether I'm using Ollama locally or even using their cloud service, and I do pay for their service. They are giving models for free. It's a newer service, but I wanted to support them because it's a fantastic project, and I'll post some links to Matt Williams, who shows you a lot of cool Ollama stuff as well, in the description below. Once it's done downloading, it just kind of disappears here, and you can proceed to download another one. If you have a lighter computer, another good one is Llama 3.2. They have these small models that run really well on lightweight hardware. So you'll just have to balance how smart of a model, local model you want with what hardware you have. If you have a good GPU, you'll be able to run some really nice models on here. And even on my desktop, I was able to run some, like I said, 70 billion parameter models. They just took longer. If I had a GPU to accelerate them, they would have been really well performing. Once I've downloaded whatever local models I want here, I can close this, and I can go back to the new chat here, and by default it'll just choose Gemma because it's the only one we have right now. You can set different ones to the default, so I could click this, set it as default, but I just wanted the hello world type thing here, so we can say here what are your capabilities, and again, depending on what's going on the computer, how fast, how much memory you have, etc., this will respond. I have multiple virtual machines all running here using up memory and CPU, and recording my screen simultaneously. So it may take a moment. And the very first time it loads, it may take a little bit longer. And then Ollama actually keeps it in memory for the next little bit in case you use it again, and then it would be a lot faster. And it took a moment, and here it's answering. So there are faster ones. The Llama one will be faster than this Gemma. This Gemma one is actually quite capable, though. You can even do audio transcription with it that I've tested, where you feed it an audio file and it'll give you a transcript with it. So it'll tell you here what it's doing. So I'm not going to get into all the features today. I'm going to save that for the next video. I did want to just pop back into Portainer here. Let's refresh. It's still saying Dockling isn't running. I'll look into that and see what the deal is, and I'll show you Dockling next time. Currently, we're set up to use Tika, but let's just confirm that. I'll show you where that is. By the way, you can open this sidebar here so you don't have to interpret what the little icons mean. If I click on my account again here, and I go admin panel, settings, and I go into documents. So here we can choose our content extraction engine. So in the future I'll be switching over to Dockling, but right now you can choose Tika, and we would have to tell it here also Node 1. On my internal network, I have my firewall set to use host names for all the different services that I have. So on mine, the default Tika port 9998 would have worked perfectly fine because I've used that host name to point to the IP address where Tika is available. But I should be able to just change it to any node name in our cluster here. If you're running on your local computer, Tika should also work because it should be within the context of your Docker Compose file. If that doesn't work, you can type localhost there or the IP address of your computer, and then that should work. You can basically leave all of the rest of the settings the same and click Save. Okay, and we don't get any errors or anything here. And we should be able to go back to our chat here. Or I think we might have aborted it because I moved away from it. So I might have to go back to new chat here. Anyway, it'll keep a chat history of everything here. Oh, there it is. And you can continue your conversation. Again, I haven't gotten into any of the details here. I just wanted to show you how to install it using Portainer and the Docker Swarm cluster that we've been building, or if you're just using Docker on a single computer, how to use that compose file to install it. I'll put the compose command in the description as well, and post the compose file for you, and that link to Matt Williams' website, who does a lot of really cool stuff with Ollama. He was part of the team that built it. It's a fantastic project. And next time I'm going to spend some significant time going into all of the really cool things you can do with WebUI, and how that could change your life if you've been working with LLMs or AI. I might show you some things next time that'll open your eyes to what's possible. It's pretty neat. Anyway, I hope this was useful to you, running our first service on our cluster, or our first stack of services on our cluster. And hope you're going to enjoy putting this together. And I'm going to keep adding to this. I'm going to show you how to set up N8N for agentic workflows. I'm going to show you how to set up maybe a CRM system, customer relations management. I'll show you how to set up a bunch of the services that I myself run on my own network. Okay? And hopefully you'll be back for next time when we do the tour. That's the part I've really been looking forward to, and I'm excited to do that. And I'm hoping to do that in the next couple of days. I have a few videos to edit first that I've been making, but probably by the weekend I'll be recording that one, or maybe even tomorrow. We'll release that as soon as I can. If you like what I'm doing here, please like and subscribe. Really looking forward to hearing from you guys. I try to answer every question or comment. Thinking about maybe in the future, once I have more of a following, to do a live workshop where we can install different services and I can answer questions and that kind of thing. But for now, I'm going to keep putting out videos and see what sticks, and see if you guys like these or hate them, and keep moving forward. And I have all kinds of crazy content planned. So hope you have a great day. Like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.